So for those of you who are not one of the three of these folks on screen, I'm Rebecca Rombaum. I lead career services at Flatiron School. And I have been doing that since 2013, so the very beginning of Flatiron School. And we learned a lot about students' journeys and what it takes to get a job and the really diverse spectrum of places that students come from and how they find code and their journeys through the course and into what they do next. And I think Kaylee, Michael, and Kirsten represent some of those diverse pathways, and so we're just going to talk to them a little bit about what they were doing before, how they got where they are, and what they're doing now. So thanks again for joining us, and I will, maybe we'll go Kirsten, Kaylee, Michael. Are you guys situated in the same way for each other as you are for me? I have Kirsten, Kaylee, Michael.
Yeah, it's the same
More or
for me,
less.
clockwise.
So maybe we'll go clockwise, starting with Kirsten. Just your name, what you were doing before Flatiron School, maybe just like a tidbit about how you found code and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I'm Kirsten O'Farrell. I finished Flatiron, the Learn online program in January. Before I started coding, I was actually a trader for about 10 years. I worked in the financial industry. On trading desks as an analyst. And I got a little bit of an introduction to code at a fund that I worked at. I had a boss who he needed stuff done in VBA, and he basically just said, this is what I need, get it done. And so I had to basically go online and teach myself VBA, and it sparked something for me. I developed an interest in code, and once I learned how to do what he was asking, I started automating everything in our office. So it really took off from there. And then I took a few online courses just to try out other languages besides VBA, and then that led me to start thinking about a career switch. Did I fully answer? Did I miss anything?
What do you do now?
Oh, well now, so ironically, I'm a software engineer I'm in the financial industry. I work at a hedge fund, and I'm a DevOps engineer. I basically maintain a 25-year-old Ruby code base, as well as build new stuff. So basically, whenever I need to go into the old code base and update something, I make a Rails app out of it. So I've built an API out of all their schemas, and I bring it to the front. I just started putting React on everything, so that's a new thing for me. I was just using I have a colleague who writes everything in PHP and .NET, so he was helping me do the front end stuff, and I was doing the back end. But yeah, so there's that, and I also have my side project. I started a company towards the end of my education at Flatiron, and I ended up getting funding for my company. My partner and I had a game idea, and he had a friend who really liked it and decided to fund the company. So I'm a busy woman, yeah. So that's what I'm doing now.
You represent two postgraduate pathways, which are job as a software engineer and also entrepreneur at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so when I really wanted to start my own company. Like when I was praying at night, I was praying for this to happen, for my idea to take off, and I was really gunning for it. I wanted to be able to spend as much time as possible with my dog. That was my motivation. But before I knew I was going to get funding, I started interviewing. And after I got the funding, I got this one phone call about a job that I had applied to before. And at first I was like, no way. There's no way I'm going back to the financial industry. I left that industry, and I want to be a software engineer now. And the the guy kind of sold it to me. The recruiter, you know, he's like, come on, just go on the interview. You know, it'll be good experience for you. Just see what it's like. And I went on the interview, and it was like I was home again, you know, because I came from that industry, and I really liked the people. And when they asked me what I wanted to make, they were like, okay. So when I told them a number. So I took it with I took the job with the idea in the back of my head that if it got to be too much running my own company and having a full-time job, that I would let one of them go. That hasn't happened. I probably is too much, but I'm not willing to let either of them go at this point. So, so yeah.
Cool. There's a lot of interesting tidbits that I want to drill into later about that. But Kaylee, let's introduce Kaylee. How did you find code? What did you do before? What do you do now?
Hi, I'm Kaylee Gray. I live in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm calling in from Sioux Falls, South Dakota today. But so I found code in college. I went to school at Drake in Des Moines for a little bit, and University of South Dakota, and kind of all over the place. And so I started with Java, but I really liked math a lot more. So I studied math as an undergrad, and then got a master's in math, and then I taught math for a few years. And I loved teaching, but it's really stressful, and the schedule is kind of like 24/7. And so I decided to make a switch after I kind of fell in love with LaTeX. I was coding all my math papers in LaTeX, and it's just really beautiful documents that it makes. So I just kind of become obsessed with that and spend a lot more time with that than math. So I left my math gigs and just decided to learn full time. And I started with free code camp and some classes with Girl Develop It to kind of feel my way through things. And I didn't really know, I'd never heard of Rails like a year ago. I didn't know that was a thing, and I heard about it through Girl Develop It, and then just decided I wanted to get started right away, learning more, and so I enrolled in Flatiron, and so I did that for about 7 or 8 months, I think, and then I got a job in Fargo working as a web developer. And yeah, it's been really awesome. And I have a 10-week-old, so I'm on maternity leave right now. And it's just so awesome to have this job, because with my teaching gig, I wouldn't have really had any leave. It would have been like, see you in a week, and you know, your students are still going to be emailing you. So it's just really nice for my family. This job is so exciting for me. So I'm really thankful for my experience.
Congratulations. I don't think I've said congratulations to you yet.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
I also want to talk a little bit more about that, kind of your priority looking for a job. We can get there a little bit later. But Michael, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Michael Casciato. I'm here in Cincinnati, Ohio. My background was kind of similar to that of Kaylee. I was in the kind of higher education realm, but I was a campus minister, not ordained, just working with kids, doing retreats, prayer services on a small Catholic campus. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years. That's what I got my undergrad and my master's in. And it got to a point where, again, like Kaylee, like the schedule was 24/7. You have to be on call. There's an emergency, and so forth. And with a growing family, I needed that more flexibility. I needed something a little bit more stable too, because there's a lot of turnover in that sector. So the only kind of coding experience I had before was just some basic like HTML and CSS I taught myself when I had downtime at work. So I made the jump after talking with my wife. I've tested the waters in some places, but Flatiron just really stood out, and I wouldn't be here without Flatiron today. And it took me about like 6 to 9 months, I think, so I was able to work part-time while starting Flatiron, which was great. My boss was very understanding about what the path I needed to take. So I did that for a few months, and then went full-time doing the Learn Online. Graduated in December, and then starting just 3 months ago in May, I got my job as a software developer with the little startup called Kraken. We do software for funeral directors, which sounds kind of odd, but everybody needs software. We're just trying to modernize the industry, get it up to speed, and we're using Ruby on Rails with Ember, so it's always a nice learning process for me.
So I know about all of your job searches, obviously. That's the part that I know the most about you, but I would love to start like in a little bit of a linear fashion around kind of your experience in the program, how you found the program. So I guess Kirsten and Michael were kind of talking about pairing on a lab before we kind of got started here. You all talked a little bit about coding, dipping your toe in, kind of looking for boot camp kind of experience before you found Flatiron. But once you were in the program, what is it like? What is the community like? What is your learning schedule like? Just what's it like to be a student online?
You want to go first, Michael?
Sure. For me, it was a completely new experience, which it might be for a lot of you since all my education have been face-to-face before. What I found that that barrier didn't matter for me because the community was so willing to help, to reach out regardless of what your problem would be. If it's small, if it required maybe a couple hours for someone to work with you, that attention to detail and really care for how you're doing really helped me get through some tough times. And I think just that kind of feedback and that relationship building was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go? I'll echo what Michael said as far as the community and kind of that instant connection that you have with other students and instructors. You don't have to wait to get help ever. I never sat there overnight, waiting for help. And for me, I was just really blown away by the program because I taught online courses. And so just to see all of the things and as far as community and connection and feedback and the level of detail for labs and that they're test driven so that you get that instant feedback was just really exciting for me. And I always say, like, this is exactly how I wanted to run my online classes, but I'm only one human. It's impossible. And that's what I was trying to do, and I was running myself into the ground. But there's so many people at Flatiron to help you. It's not just one instructor that's trying to manage, 50 to 200 people. So yeah, it's really incredible to get all the help. For me, online is hard sometimes, but yeah, that community is available, and I also try to connect with people locally as well. If I was kind of feeling like trapped in my computer a little bit, and a lot of like there's phone calls and video calls, so you really do feel connected, which is awesome. So yeah.
Yeah, I can echo all that too. Definitely never having to wait, having the chat feature on the right of all the lessons, like you could put anything in there and either an instructor would respond to you or another student, which is great because we were encouraged to help students coming up underneath us, which helps solidify us learning stuff from the past, as well as it keeps it going, like keeps the conversation going. Also, like our Slack channel, all of our all the different channels, like you could post something in there and be like, can somebody take a look at this? And then a few minutes later somebody's typing and has a response to it. So it was really great. Like it really is an actual community, like a real virtual community. And I feel like it's even more so than an in-person campus, because it's like you take out this layer of like insecurity because there's no, because we're not there right with each other. It's just about the code, and it's just about us all doing a good job and helping each other do a good job. And also, I found it really valuable to have like the one-on-one lessons. Like if I was really struggling with something, ask one of the instructors, for a screen share, and and they'd go through and refactor or do whatever. And it wasn't hard, like Kaylee said, it wasn't hard to get somebody to help you, which is amazing. So yeah.
I was so excited what you said about the community because I was just thinking about on-campus classes versus online, and I was thinking about all of the on-campus courses that I've ever taken, and I've never had this level of interaction with,
I agree.
yeah, so that's a great point.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Kaylee, so you were a teacher right before this, and you were teaching apparently some online classes. I didn't know that. What So you obviously have an opinion about like pedagogy and how to build community and how teachers and students ideally would interact. What was different about this?
Um, oh, a lot of things, but I think with the traditional model, you're kind of like in and out, and you have like the structured schedule of, and everybody's on the same schedule. So I think for me, I like to move slowly and like very detailed person. So for me to not be on this like tight schedule and to be able to get really deep when I wanted to, that was a huge, exciting thing for me. And the fact that it did take me 8, 9 months, and I'm still, going, but it's really nice that I was able to do that. So I think the schedule is really awesome comparatively. And then just the cost as well is much more affordable than a traditional setting. And I think also sort of like the levels of help, is you get help from fellow students, which is very valuable, and you provide help to fellow students. And then you also connect with instructors and people who are like Avi, like running the thing, you're connecting with him. So I think like talking to people at different levels often doesn't happen in a traditional setting. And I think talking to people who are all at different levels can really be beneficial because everybody has a different way of explaining, and it's just really nice. So, yeah.
That's actually one thing that I think is really valuable. I have thought through the years is really valuable about our environment is kind of the diversity of perspectives that you get when you ask a question, like from a teacher or from a fellow student or from a technical coach. When you ask a question and they answer you, can someone kind of talk about that experience? Like, did you ever have a question where you got multiple inputs to help figure it out? And how do you actually do that? Like, let's say I'm not a student yet, and I'm like, what are you talking about? How would I know where to access all of these multiple inputs? How does that go?
I can't remember the exact thing or lesson I was on, excuse me, but the way you would go about doing it is you have Slack on one hand for asking any sort of questions. It can be course related, non-course related. You can get pretty much an immediate response on there. Sometimes people might refer you to the web-based instructor chat session where you can say, I need help with this, and then you might have to wait a little bit, but then you can, any student, as both of the other ladies have said, any student or instructor might hop on, and either the instructor might take over or they might bounce back and forth ideas like that. I know I went through that a couple times. I'm not sure when, though.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point you make because, a lot of times we're on Stack Overflow. We're trying to learn stuff. We're trying to, as well as, get through the lesson, like teach ourselves, stuff. And you're not going to find the exact answer on Stack Overflow or on any of the forums. You have to, go look for something really close or as close as you can get to what you're trying to do, and you have to, it's like a whole new way of learning. Like you have to be able to translate it in your head and apply it, and that's actually something that has been really valuable in the workplace.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Add, Kaylee?
Yeah, I wanted to say a couple things about that flow. I had some environmental hurdles at one point. I did something silly with installing something weird, and it just happens, and so I hopped on the ask a question feature, and and then they referred me to somebody on Slack, and then because it was a really complicated thing to debug, it ended up being pretty ugly. So it sounds like I went through a lot of work to get this question, but it was really confusing. And then I went to Slack, and then I got an email from somebody else, and then we screen shared and sent some stuff back and forth. So like all these different, everybody's trying to get your question answered. And so usually it's like right away it happens, but if something more complicated happens, like you can't learn, that's, you're going to get it fixed. People are going to help you get it figured out, and they're going to track down a way to do it. And that I don't think that took a day. Can you think of like all those levels of communication that happen in like less than 24 hours? That's nuts. So yeah, lots of different avenues and lots of people hustling to get you going.
I actually think that ties in nicely with what Kirsten just said, which is like, that sounds like the way that something would get fixed at work. It's like, you select someone, and then they have to send you an email, you need to send them a screenshot, maybe screen share at some point. Sounds like work.
Definitely.
When did you guys, so you had all been kind of playing around with code a little bit before in various ways, and it seems like everyone thinks, there's a lot to offer in the community and the various kinds of support in the full stack web experience at Flatiron School. When did you decide to kind of make that jump? Like, when did you know it was the right time to look for or jump into a boot camp kind of experience?
I'll take that one. So I started looking at courses, either in-person immersives, or I play on a club soccer team, and one of my teammates was he's a treehouse advisor or mentor, and he started talking to me about boot camps and stuff, and he kind of steered me towards online, and then as I'm Googling around and looking at different schools, I noticed that you could try the Ruby class before you get in, that you study for a month or whatever it is, however long it takes you to finish the Ruby track. That's what got me. Like, that totally was the hook for me. Like, I started doing it, and I fell right in love with Ruby, and I fell right in love with the community, and I was gonna get in once I started to do that. So that was it for me.
Anyone else?
Kind of similar for me. I have some friends who are in the local tech scene, so throughout my entire discerning if this is the right thing to do, I would meet with them periodically and just hear what they did and see what kind of experiences they had, because I have a friend who has both enterprise and startup experience, just seeing what different paths I could take. But similar to Kirsten, once I started doing the code, once I started pushing myself to learn it, even if it was a free course, that it started clicking. Like, this is the thing.
Yeah, I think the same thing hooked me into. I was looking around and reading different reviews of online programs, trying to figure out my next step. And I was just like really itching to get going. It'd been a couple of months of me just kind of being overwhelmed by all these free things, and just kind of looking for a direction to like focus in on and go, instead of like doing 5 million different things. And so, I found Flatiron on a bunch of different places, and I started the Intro to Ruby stuff, and it's just so fun. The curriculum is very well done, and yeah, it sucks you in. It's hard to say no after that, and especially if you love learning. So it's awesome.
Okay, everyone should try the free courses if they are considering the online program, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's an awesome way to tell if, one, you think you can handle it, and two, if it's something you actually want to do. Like, there's no risk. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's something else I was thinking about. Oh, sorry. That it's awesome because you can try it and figure out if that's, you know, where you want to go. But the great thing is you really can't fail with it because you have as long as you want. So even if it's really hard, it's just going to be really hard for a long time, you know, a longer time. So that's exciting.
That's actually going to be my next question. So curriculum's great. There's a lot of support. You guys all met your goals. How hard is it? How hard is it while you're in it? What ways is it hard?
What ways? I think for me it was hard at first with just managing. If you're going to do it part-time at first, really get down a good schedule of how to do it. Because for me, I was alternating days back and forth between learning to code 8 hours a day and going back to work at the university for 8 hours a day. And being very different sides of the brain, that was kind of hard to juggle at first. So I got into a groove. So really get down a good plan, even if it's blocking off time. So I'm going to learn Ruby 4 hours this day. I'm going to learn this the next day. Really, I think getting a good schedule can help you get in a good groove. Even if you're not a scheduled person, just force yourself to do it. I think it really helps.
Me? So yeah, I had the same experience as Michael. I was actually working full time when I started, and I thought I'm such a hard worker. I can just do it on the nights and weekends, and then all of a sudden I had zero time, and so I hit up Avi like a couple months in, and I was so overwhelmed, and I was like, I love this, but I don't know if I can continue doing this. Like, actually, I wrote a blog post about it. I'll forward it around on Medium. His suggestion to me was, why don't you ask your boss if you can work part-time? And I was like, why didn't I think of that? And so I, at first I was like, there's no way he'll let me. And then I like honestly explained my situation to him. I was like, look, I want to take my career in this direction. I'm studying, and what do you think we can do about that? Can you help me? And he was like, sure. What do you want to do? 3 days a week, whatever. And so I went down to 3 days a week at work, and then eventually down to 2 days a week. And I kind of tapered down my schedule to very part-time. And toward like the last month of my studying, I wasn't working at all. I was just doing schoolwork. So that was, I don't even remember what the question exactly was, but that's how I handled the time management part of it. And that was what was initially hard about it. The other thing I could say that was initially hard about it was that I kind of held myself to like the standard. Like I had to get labs done in a certain amount of time, and like I had to keep going, and it was hard for me to like go for a few days and then be like, all right, I need to give my brain a break, or I could be allowed to make a lot of mistakes. That's something that was hard for me at the beginning, because really, I mean, once you really get going, you realize that making mistakes is how you learn. And I know that sounds corny and cliche, but it is so 100% the truth when it comes to programming. So yeah.
Yeah. So it was very challenging. It was very hard. I think mostly emotionally for me, just like keep moving, keep going. But I was gonna kind of echo some other things that they were saying. For me, I set goals each week, which kind of fell to the wayside eventually, but I was trying to get through so many labs each week, or make sure that I get a certain number of hours each week. But I did. I took a lot of breaks. I took a lot of mental breaks. I took days off. I traveled. I wasn't working at all. I just took time. I hadn't taken time off since ever. So I really just needed that reset, I think, and I think I needed to really commit this and focus entirely on it, so that I knew that I was making the right choice. So that worked really well for me.
Okay, time management, allowing ourselves to pause and be bad at finishing the lab before we finish it, and then we're immediately good at it and everything's great, and then you go on to struggling again.
Yeah, I had a couple labs that literally made me cry. Like I was ready to throw my laptop out the window and forget it, quit. And then you get through them and it's like, and then you feel like Elliot Alderson.
You've made that reference to me now twice. What is that? Who is that?
Oh, Mr. Robot. Yeah.
Sorry, not that technical.
Oh no, that's okay. That show, if anybody hasn't watched it, it is a must see, especially for a programmer. It's amazing.
I think another thing that was hard for me was that I'm sort of an A seeker. I love getting A's, and that was like, unfortunately, a lot of my motivation for learning all through school. And so for this, it's like completion. You have to get it done. You have to get through it. And so it's a similar reward, but it's a different thing to get used to, I think. But yeah, it was cool.
Let's switch gears now a little bit to job search stuff. My very favorite conversation to facilitate, as you all know. Why don't we actually, you all have pretty interesting paths to your jobs. Kirsten talked a little bit about hers already, and I think one of the interesting takeaways there is kind of leveraging your past experience to get a job in programming, even though you're not a trader at this company. They do finance stuff, and that's really valuable to them. But Michael's job, for instance, is not related to his previous job. What was the path to getting that job? And I want you to definitely mention the three-way conference call that we had with Newbie.
Of course, yes. So for me, being in Cincinnati, it's a growing tech scene. There's definitely, like, in the Midwest, it's kind of growing, but it's not like a Chicago or San Francisco or anything like that. So it's a lot of personal effort. You have to really go out there and look for people who are hiring. It's a lot of just emailing hiring managers, just other developers at the companies, or in my case, what led to my job was attending meetups. Just little things over lunch for someone to present about a topic. I went to a JavaScript meetup, and on the elevator ride up to the office, got in this conversation with the guy who turned out to be the presenter of the talk. And one thing led to another. I gave him my business card or networking card, just my information on it. And I thought nothing of it. Had the meetup, went on with my day, went on with my week. A couple weeks later, I got an email from who's now the CTO, my boss at Kraken. And it turns out the presenter who I met was a former employee of Kraken and just passed on my information to Kraken. And one thing led to another. I had an interview over lunch with CTO, then a technical interview. And then actually on my birthday in May, I got hired. So it was a nice little present and cap to it. But leading up to that, before I got the offer, since I was getting towards the end of my little 6-month period of searching, throughout that time, you will meet with the career coach weekly to go over your plan, to figure out how can I make myself more noticeable, make these people want to talk to me, and even strategizing with your career coach. And I did once with my career coach, Anne Rebecca. Which is great that she's available to take her time out to just strategize, say, okay, look at this company, maybe you can build this one thing for them. Maybe you can tailor your own personal website to look like this website, and just kind of make yourself more noticeable. And some of the things, kind of like how Kirsten said, would be like, oh, I should have thought of that. But once hearing someone else say it is really kind of like a nice driving factor to get you over that hump when you get to it.
What was the thing you ended up doing for Kraken?
I actually didn't do anything for the Kraken. It was a really fast, it was a really fast process. I had lunch on a Friday, that following Thursday with a technical interview, and actually that night I got an offer in the email, but then countered, and then they accepted that the following day. So.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that was just from networking, just meeting a
Just
guy.
networking, yeah.
That's cool.
That is cool. Kaylee, how did you find your job?
Yeah, mine's a funny story. Well, I think, but yeah, networking as well. I'll tell the stories, but for me, networking was terrifying. And then I saw this, one of my friends posted or something that to think about networking is just meeting friends. And for me, that really helped take off the pressure because when I started, I was like, I'm meeting all these people and I'm going to get jobs from them. So I can't, so I just like putting all this pressure on these networking, then it was not going well. I was so freaked out. And so finally I said, like, I'm just meeting friends. And now, since I started, I really did just meet friends, and I happened to get a job as well. So yeah, I went to a hackathon, which was also really scary, but I did it, and I met a guy, and he noticed where I was at with code, and he said, hey, you're doing Rails. There's this other company in town that has some Rails projects. Maybe you should reach out to them and see what's available. Um, and so I did, and we started with an interview and just like an informal interview, and then I had a project, and then like a panic moment the night before that Rebecca saved me from because I thought my project was terrible and I just was like ready to withdraw from the whole process. But she talked me down and kept me professional, and even keeled, and along with several other people, getting me in touch with Rebecca. So, yeah.
And how did you, this is maybe a little bit farther into like no-brainer hire stuff, but how did you approach that employer after you had kind of decided your project was crap and that it wasn't worthy of their viewing?
Yeah, just pretty much saying this is where I'm at, that, and this is what I have to show, and not making excuses or saying sorry about my skill level. Just, I mean, it's important to know where I was at anyway, so just staying cool and calm and just turning it in. And I made a video walkthrough to kind of like add a little extra element of pizzazz, and Rebecca recommended a blog post about it as well, which I think helped kind of make it nice.
That's a good point that Kelly said about the walkthroughs and blog posts. It's part of the curriculum if you choose to do Flatiron. And that was something that stood out with when I had the interview with my CTO. He said, being able to look through your code online is one thing, but to hear you talk about it and write about it, that's another thing. So it really helps you become, I can't think of the word right now, but being able to speak about it, to talk about it, and be intelligent about it, that's going to push you over the edge too.
So what are some of the things, let's say I'm considering becoming a student or I'm a student now, your employed self, what would you tell your day one Flatiron School program self about what to do to be employable towards the end? What to pay attention to, what actions to take? Michael said blogging, which I'm going to repeat and emphasize.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing I would tell myself is to not underestimate myself, and don't be afraid to put myself out there, not only to people locally in my community of Fargo, but also people through Flatiron. Don't be scared to reach out to people, because it kind of, you're nervous at the beginning and you don't realize how responsive and helpful people are. So you're kind of like nervous, like, should I ask a question? And yeah, you should ask a question. So I think just like diving in and not being so scared. But
Yeah, I could second that. Definitely not underestimating, not thinking that you should know something. And most of the time, nothing is ever exactly the same. there's a lot of figuring stuff out as you go along, and advanced developers have to do that too. Advanced developers have to look stuff up. So feeling like a beginner when I was a very new beginner, I should have been okay with that. I wish that I had told myself, like, go mess up, it's okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point, especially since the last thing I did before jumping into Flatiron and learned was I was an adjunct teaching a course. So I was really in that mindset of there's a way things have to be done. If you're not doing it this way, you're not doing it the right way. So just I wish I would have pushed myself back then, or anybody starting now, just take a step back, breathe, think of what the goal is, what your long-term goal is at the light at the end of the tunnel. There is a light. It might be dim, but it's there. And just keep your head up. Like, and as Kirsten said, failing is only another way to learn how to not to do something. So just keep at it, keep grinding, and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
So when you guys started working, this is a question from the group. How, we're talking about kind of like not doubting ourselves and kind of learning how to learn and learning how to give ourselves permission to be learning. And from everything I've heard from grads, that process basically never ends, right? You just level up and then you're learning a new or harder thing. How did you feel and deal with the transition into being a professional developer where the expectation is not now that you're a student and your job is learning, but it's that you're adding value on a code base?
It's a nice group of emotions from, oh my gosh, I'm hired, I have a job, this is for real, and then you show up, you're like, this is for real. And it's going to be another wave of fear, but then hopefully your boss, your team will be really understanding like mine is. There's another person on our team who's actually from a different boot camp. They'll go nameless. But the way that they're okay with where you are, and if you have a question, they're open to ask too, and they want you to learn. I mean, obviously, since you're being paid to do this, you have to learn a little bit faster, maybe than you had in the past, and just push yourself a little harder. But for me, it's very similar because there's that community aspect too. I'm able to ask a question, just wheel right behind him to the other desk to ask my boss a question, and I just hit my 3 month and I had a nice little feedback session with him, and he said, you're doing great. Like you're the kind of where you are as a developer is where I would expect like 95% of people of your level to be with. So people love working with you. Just keep up doing what you're doing. So having feedback sessions with supervisors is something that I would encourage you to approach them with if it's not already in place too.
What's the question again?
How do you deal with, what was it like to go through the transition of your job being, I'm a student and I'm supposed to be learning, to being a professional developer and your job is
having to produce. Yeah. I don't remember. I didn't have time to think about it. Like I got thrown right into the frying pan. It was like, because I was the only Ruby developer, and they were like, one of our vendors is changing a bunch of stuff, and we have to adjust to that. So here's everything you have to fix, and this is your deadline. And if you don't fix everything in this deadline, then all of our files are going to be messed up. So it was like this kind of panic mode, like, just get it done, like learn as much as, I was learning, the style of the guy before me that had my job before me, as well as, learning new stuff in order to adjust to what was about to happen. So it was really stressful at first, but it ended up giving me a lot of confidence because I was able to do it. I was able to figure it out in the amount of time that I had. And trust me, like I called on Avi, I called on prior students. I went back, but I think that's probably pretty rare. And I also I was really lucky to have you know, a group of people that I worked with that knew that what I was doing was challenging, you know, and so they all allowed me to get frustrated. They called it being passionate, you know, and yeah, it was a really good experience.
Yeah, I think the transition for me was really surprisingly smoother than I had anticipated. I think that the great thing at Flatiron is the level of challenge that you face. The code challenges are not easy, and so you're not setting up yourself for this like dream world of you know, perfect breezy stuff, and because that's not what you're going to work with. And so that was really helpful to kind of hit bumps in the road before I hit bumps in the road at work when I'm expected to get through those bumps. And so I think one of the hard parts, though, was going and hitting ugly code, you know, like legacy code, and they also have their own, they wrote their own language. So it's just like when you get into a code base, you know, there's no Google for that, and so that's a tough transition because I was used to being able to get help on everything on the internet. You know, I mean, I could reach out to people at Flatiron, but I could also Google a lot of things. And so when you get on the job and you're in this like very niche area, like it's just no more Google. So that's hard.
Yeah, I left that part out, like that I was thrown in the frying pan, but I was well prepared because of what I, you know, because of what I learned at Flatiron, because of what I learned, you know, I was able to do it. Like it wasn't an insurmountable task because I was trained. I was ready for it.
And do you guys all, what do you each code in? How does the languages you learned here impact your job search? We're moving to questions from the crowd now.
Yeah, I mean,
For me,
I've got a sorry, Mike. I have a legacy Ruby code base, and I've started applying React. I was in the program when Angular was still the front end, and I've been learning React lately. Thanks to Luke, shout out. And I still go to his study groups. Yeah, so mostly Ruby. This is weird. Like a lot of their code base, their front end stuff is written in Cold Fusion, which is some weird combination of HTML and Java. So I end up having to touch that a little bit, but I would say it's 85% Ruby.
yeah, so we're a Ruby on Rails shop, so that's our main focus. And I was with Kirsten in the curriculum. I was doing Angular, but we're doing Ember.js, which is a little bit of a smaller framework, but there's some similarities. So once you know like how things kind of navigate a framework, it's easier to jump to another one, I think. My job is about, I'd say 80-20 Ruby versus Ember, because I do more back-end stuff. But I'm encouraged to learn Ember to make it a little bit easier for our front-end developers. So.
I primarily work with JavaScript, and we don't really have much of a framework. We're trying to transition our code into Rails. So I work it with Rails and Ruby a little bit, but mostly JavaScript. And so it's interesting because that wasn't the bulk of what I was studying, but the transition was really smooth because so many concepts, you know, just really flow over to other languages nicely. And so it's not like you're jumping in cold. You have this wealth of knowledge that's very helpful.
That is an interesting point that let's stay on for just a minute. So everyone's using a little bit of something that they hadn't learned in school, it sounds like. How can you figure out how to do that in a work environment? What's the process? Where are you drawing from?
Sorry, did I just interrupt somebody? I think you just adapt. Like, one of you two mentioned it. Once you, yeah, Mike about Ember. Like once you, I mean, cold fusion, forget it. But once you start learning one language, a lot of other languages have some kind of relation, and so it becomes easier to pick things up. Like I think you could relate it to like if you learn Latin, it's not as hard to learn French as if you hadn't learned Latin yet, and so it helps me when I work in other languages. It actually helps me with my Ruby because it opens up my mind a little bit.
Yeah, I think the thing for me, especially with having this like special language that they wrote, the most important thing that I have to remind myself is just to ask, because I spent time at the beginning trying to kind of read the code and have it talk to me, kind of like, okay, I'm going to piece it together and I'm going to just figure out what this language that I don't know is trying to say, and there's no way to like magically have that happen. I need to just ask for help, and I have plenty of coworkers that are willing to help. So I think that's most important.
Yeah, it's just to expand a little bit. I can easily ask for help also, just like Kaylee, but I'm also encouraged to try and build something away from what our production app is to learn Ember. So whether it's just building like a blog site or building something simple just to familiarize with myself, something I've been working on too.
So I guess last question with the 5 minutes we have left. Someone who's on the webinar asks, how can I conquer the you need experience but you don't have any hump? Which I would say you've all conquered working in your first job.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really employer specific, based on my experience. Some, depending on what sector you go in, if it says like 3 to 5 years experience, that's all they're looking for. But a lot of times they're looking, in my experience, also for how you can present yourself. If you can show that you're able to learn, and how quickly you can do that, which my CTO was very understanding in that. He said, I know you're doing a career change, so you're not going to have this breadth of experience, and so he wasn't, that expectation wasn't there in my case. But again, it could be. I'm sure it does vary between employers. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think similarly, like show that you can learn. That's something that my employer has mentioned to me a couple of times. Like, yeah, you were new, you've never worked professionally doing this, but we knew that you could learn anything that we needed you to. So I think that comes from blog posts and video walkthroughs and your GitHub account, just seeing all of that work. It's no question that you can learn what you need to learn. So, and really, like all those big projects that you have to do for Flatiron, that is experience, so it's not like, you didn't get paid for it, but that's really a big accomplishment, I think. And so I think that's important to push towards them and show them your work.
That's what I was going to say too. We come out of, we graduate with a full portfolio, with projects that we built in each language that we learned. So we don't have no experience. Also, while you're job searching, you can build stuff. You can show what kind of experience you have and what you can do. And also, someone else mentioned it, like leverage your other experience. It didn't matter if I was going to get a job in finance, but I did have experience being a professional and being in a professional environment. So I could kind of turn their focus on that a little bit.
Thanks, guys. Does anyone want to say more words of wisdom in our last 2 minutes together?
Just
enjoy it and have fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Enjoy the process. It's it's hard and it really, like, I can truly say it changed who I am. Like, it changed my outlook on who I am and what I want to get out of spending 10 hours a day doing work, you know?
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for everyone who
Thank you.
came.
It's so nice to see all of your faces. Thank